กับปรมัตถกันก่อน
มหาพิวาทะพุทธวจนะ
วจนะจตุราสีติธรรมขันธาสหัสสามิ
วิสติ
วีสติอ
อริยมรร
ริยมรรคา
วิ
วี
ส
ส
ติ
ติ
สา
สา
มัญญ
มัญ
พ
ญ
ละ
พลังเอกะ
กา
นิ
นิ
พา
พา
นะ
นะโดยเฉียบพลัน
ตาผล
กานิเทิน
โดยเฉียบพลันปฏิกานิเทิน
สาธุสาธุสาธุ
โย
โยโวอานันทมยาธรรม
โมจาวิ
วิ
น
นโยจะเทสิโต
ปัญ
ปั
ญ
ญญา
โต
โตโสโวมามาจ
จะ
เย
นะสัทธา
ทา
โย
โย
โวอานันทม
ธรรม
ยาย
ธรรมโมจาวินโย
โยจะเท
จะเท
สิโต
สิโต ปั
ปั
ญ
ญ
ญา
ญา
โต
โตโส
โสโวมามาจเยนะสัทธา โยโวอานัน
นันทม
ธรร
ยาม
ยาธรรมโมจาวินโยจะเทสิโต
ปัญญา
ปัญญาโตโสโวมามาจเยนะสัทธา
พุทธวจ
พุท
นะ
ธวจนะจตุราสีติธรรมขันธาสหัสสามิ
คือป
คือ
ร
ปรมัตถอนุตตรสัมมาสัมโพธิ
ส
สมณะโคตมะปัญญาธิกะนะโมตัสสะ
ภะคะ
ภะ
วะ
คะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะ
มหาม
หาภิวะทะ
ปรมัตถ
ป
อ
ร
นุต
มัต
ต
ถ
รสัมมา
ตร
สัม
สัม
โพ
มา
ธิ
สัมโพธิ ปัญญาธิกะ
ทรง
ทรง
บำ
บำ
เพ็
เพ็
ญ
ญ
ม
ม
หา
หา
ปา
ปาร มี 20 อสังไขยะกำไรแสนกัปปะ
ทรงพบปรมัตถ
ป
อ
ร
นุ
มั
ต
ต
ต
ถ
ร
อนุตตรสัมมาสัมโพธิ 512,028 ปัญญาธิกะพุทธะด้วยเสียงเก้า
นะโม
นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโต
อะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะมหาภิวาทะปรมัตถ
อนุตตรสัมมาสัมโพธิ
สัท
สัทธาธิกะ
ท
ท
ร
รง ง
บำ
บำ
เพ็
เพ็
ญ
ญ
มหาม
หาปารมี 40 อสังไขยะกำไรแสนกัปปะ ทรงพบปรมัตถอนุตตรสัมมาสัมโพธิ 1,24,055 สัทธาธิกะพุทธะ
ด้วยเสียง
ด้วย
กล่าว
เสียงเก้า
นะโม
นะ
ตัส
โมตัสสะภะคะวะโต อะระหะโต
สัมมา
สัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะ มหาภิวาทะ
ปรมัตถ
ปรมัตถอนุตตรสัมมาสัมโพธิ วิริยาธิกะ
ทรงบำ
ทรง
เพ็ญ
บำเพ็ญมหาปารมี 80 อสังไขยะกำไรแสนกัปปะ
ทรงพบ
กับ ปรมัตถอนุตตรสัมมาสัมโพธิ 2,48,109 วิริยาธิกะพุทธะด้วยเสียงเก้า สาธุ
สาธุนมัสการพี่ปิ่งนมัส
น
การ
มัสการไอเย
นมัสการ
สติอริยมรรคะวีสติสามัญญพละ
นมัสการไอเย
เอกานิพพานะขิปปาพิญญาโดยเฉียบพลันในประวัติการนี้เทิน
สา
สาธุสาธุสาธุนวุติอุปนิธิพันธะอนุโมทามิ
so
What is the topic today?
before today we change our the way we explain about Dhamma a little bit. Today we might focus on the interaction we are asked, and then we have a conversation, and then we lead to details about Dhamma. So before we begin today's class, we need to mention about the important note, as always, that Dhamma provided in this presentation is simple and not Kampira or profound. People must continuously study Dhamma, or else will lead to Mahatapa, Niraya, or hell, because it is Miccha-Titti, not following the Buddha's teaching. If any provided content contrasts with Dhamma 84,000 Dhammakantaka, please refer to Dhamma 84,000 Dhammakantaka only. And today is second Sukha Pakhatsa Makha Sira Masasa Maha Buddha Jayanti 2614 or November 22nd Buddhist era 2568. As we mentioned at the beginning of the class that Yovo Ananta Maya Dhammo Ja Vinayo Ja Tesito Panyatto Sovo Mamajayena Sattha, translating into English that Putta Vajana 84,000 Dhammakantaka is Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi. That's why we need to Sikkaya or study, or else it will lead to Mahatapa Niraya or hell because it is Micchaditti. And we are one of the four Putta Parisa, four Putta Parisa consisting of Bhikkhu, Bhikkhuni, Upasaka, and Upasika. And these four Putta Parisa has the responsibility. So the details of the responsibility of the four Putta Parisa are as follows. The first one is the four Putta Parisa must well understand the Tipitaka, 84,000 Dhammakantaka. And the second one is the four Putta Parisa must be able to correctly present 84,000 Dhammakantaka. And the last one, the four Putta Parisa must be able to correct those who condemn or misunderstand the Tipitaka, 84,000 Dhammakantaka. And at this
Now,
moment, yes, please repeat.
Please pay respect to our Tipitaka Dhammacariya Dhammapara Theravada Phara Pothi Suchad Nakon and Than Angka Kuna Ariya Dhamma Vatta Pirata Sotapanna and Than Pachara Pothi Dhamma Sotapanna Vi Sati Ariya Makha Vi Sati Samanya Phara Eka Nibbana Kippha Pinya โดยเฉียบพลันในประวัติการนี้เถิดสาธุสาธุสาธุนาวุติอุปนิธิพันธะอนุโมทามิ
Today we begin with our first topic. Actually, we mentioned about this topic before in our previous class. However, I think this topic needs a bit more detail, so we can focus a bit on the details of this topic. This topic, the relationship between Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, is not only the word that you see on the slide. Actually, for the beginners, when Buddha enlightenment, then the teaching of Buddha is Dhamma. And when Dhamma happened, the one who Sikkaya or following the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, as we mentioned at the beginning of the class, they'll reach Sangha or Ariya Bukkhala. Ariya Bukkhala starting from Sotapati Makha and until reach the final of Ariya Bukkhala, which is Arahata Phala. Ariya Bukkhala consisting of 8 Bukkhala. The first one is Sotapati Makha. The second one is Sotapati Phala, Sakathakami Makha, Sakathakami Phala, Anakhami Makha, Anakhami Phala, Arahata Makha, and Arahata Phala. These are 8 Ariya Bukkhala, and the relationship is far more important than that. Please be reminded that we mentioned at the beginning of the class that Dhamma of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi is profound and Gambhira. So this explanation is quite simplified, very simple, right? Because because of the enlightenment of Buddha, then the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi appears called Dhamma, and then who follows the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi turn into Sangha or Ariya Bukkhala. These are very easy to understand. Am I correct, Piping?
Yes.
It just seem easy to understand, right?
It seems that we have talked it before again and again, but what is the new thing that you want us to know today?
Very good questions. It's very easy, right? And please
It seems
yes,
it
it
seems
seems
easy.
easy. And please be reminded that that's why we need to mention at the beginning of our every class that Dhamma provided in this presentation is simple, not compira or profound. The sentence that you have just heard, because the enlightenment of Buddha, then the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi or Buddha or called Dhamma happen, and then the one who study Dhamma or Sikha Dhamma can reach Sangha or Arya Pukkala. If the teaching is that, if the teaching is this simple, we don't need to Sikhaya this hard. If only the relationship between each of the component that simple as the sentence said, and when we heard that sentence, it's very easy to understand that way. But today we are going to show a bit of how profound of Dhamma or Kampira is. The first one, we start from Buddha, right? When Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi enlightenment, before Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi enlightenment, Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi need to take time to accumulate the knowledge or the parami. At least for example, like this Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi category is Panyatika. Panyatika need 20 asankhaya to gather the information or the knowledge. We use this kind of word for you to easy understanding. To gather the knowledge that needed and to gain barami, to be enlightenment as Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi. And 20 asankhaya, one asankhaya is the solid mountain, like rock mountain. 16 kilometers height and a cross section of 16 kilometers times 16 kilometers. Every 100 years, Devata comes and wipe gently with fine cloth. The time that take until this solid rock mountain bare to the ground, that is one asankhaya. So you can imagine that it's very, very long time for 20 asankhaya. This is one of the three tika of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi. Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi consisting of three types of tika. Panyatika need 20 asankhaya to enlightenment. And for Satthatika, it requires 40 asankhaya for enlightenment. And the last one, Viryatika, required 80 asankhaya for enlightenment. And then we start from this because this is the story of Buddha, how Buddhas come. And when we tell the story like this, we all familiar with this chart, right? Dhamma Vinaya,
Yes.
consisting of Vinaya and Dhamma 63,000 Dhammakantaka. And after Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi enters Nirvana, then we divided Dhamma 63,000 Dhammakantaka into Suttanta 21,000 Dhammakantaka and Abhidhamma 42,000 Dhammakantaka. And the one that I've just mentioned, we mentioned about the story of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi before Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi enlightenment. And that kind of story, you see that there is a person and place and interaction. They are stories, right? They're stories. And those stories classified as Suttanta, 21,000 Dhammakantaka. And from those stories, they are under Dhamma. When Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi enlightenment, the story is Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi sit under Bodhi tree, and then Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi enlightenment. That is the story of, you see, there's a people, place, interaction. That is a story. Story classified under Suttanta. And and the way to explain the cause, real cause that caused the result of Suttanta, the person, place, and story, lies in Abhidhamma. And before the enlightenment of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, Dhamma doesn't exist. So the connection between Suttanta and Abhidhamma at that moment before the enlightenment of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi doesn't exist. So people don't know the connection between Suttanta to Abhidhamma, which the cause of everything lies in Abhidhamma. However, before the enlightenment of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, Dhamma doesn't exist. Nobody knows. So this pathway from Suttanta to Abhidhamma doesn't exist. No one knows before the enlightenment of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi. However, this pathway exists, but no one knows. This knowledge disappear from 31 Bhumi. I speak in general because actually there's remains in some Bhumi, but in general, this kind of knowledge disappear from 31 Bhumi before the enlightenment of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi. So this pathway from Suttanta to reach Abhidhamma doesn't exist. So before, at that moment, before Buddha happened, Dhamma doesn't exist. So nobody reach Sankha. No one can reach Sotapadimagga. No one can reach Nirvana at that moment. So the important is when Buddha happened and Buddha explained us about the Dhamma, if we doesn't look into Dhamma very carefully, we will see Dhamma only words, only alphabets, only books, or only scripts that write on the paper, on the media at that moment, or leaves, things like that. However, that's why it's very important that we mention at the beginning of the class, every class, that Dhamma is not that simple. It's very profound, very Kampira. You need to look into very fine details with all your ability. The efforts that you put on to understand the knowledge that you study in class, in university, you need to put more effort than that to understand Dhamma. So you need to look into very fine details with all your capability. So what I'm trying to explain is that when you look when you look quickly through Dhamma, you understand that Dhamma is the words that written on the paper, on the media. At this moment, you can find it on computer, on file, on your smartphone, on your tablet. That's fine. But that is only alphabets, not actually Dhamma. But Dhamma is here. Dhamma is the way connect Suttanta to Abhidhamma, and under Abhidhamma lies Nirvana. This is a place where Sattva reach Sankha. So look at this chart again. The story, people, place, story, that is categorized as Suttanta. Before the enlightenment of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, no one knows the connection between the pathway from Suttanta to Nirvana, which lies in Abhidhamma. This pathway never exists, doesn't exist. This knowledge doesn't exist at that moment. So when Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi enlightenment, this pathway appears because the teaching of Anuttara Sammasambuddha, this pathway appears. So people from this box, people like us, we are people, right? We live in our house. We need to go to work. We have our stories in every day. Our interaction in our everyday lives, we have our body, our environment. We interact with many things around us. We have our stories in every day that are classified as Suttanta. That Suttanta, we need to go to Dhamma and then go to Abhidhamma. At that Abhidhamma, then we have a chance to reach Nirvana. You see, this pathway is very important that you need to see. Look carefully. So what I'm trying to explain at this moment, at this point, is when you perceive Dhamma as the book, as the paper, as the alphabets on the paper, or the voice, it doesn't only that kind of form. That is very simplified. But if you look carefully, very deep into details, you'll see that Dhamma not actually the alphabets that appears on the media, on the leaves, on computer, on tablet, on smartphone. It's not just that. Actually, it's the pathway. Connect you from Suttanta to Nirvana. However, before enter Nirvana, that's why every time when Ajahn Atibai explained to us, Ajahn explained that every single Dhamma that Anuttara Samma Sambuddha mentioned, in the end, each of those Dhamma will reach Nirvana, because this Dhamma is the pathway to reach Nirvana. You start from one word, whatever, like, for example, like Lopa. Lopa, we might, with our limitations of understanding before Sikaya, we explain Lopa as greed, right? Lopa, greed, we use a dictionary. You translate from Makata language into English language. Look carefully at this example. We translate from Makata language. What is Makata language? Makata language, it's composed of people in Makata, in the era that they are using Makata as communication language, right? People using this language to communicate to each other. So Makata language consisting of people, place, and stories. Makata language is Suttanta. And then we translate it into greed. Greed also English language. English language need people, communication together in the place that use English as their language. So people, place, story remains in Suttanta. That's why greed, Alopa translate into greed. You cannot reach Nirvana by doing that. You remain in Suttanta without knowing that you remain in Suttanta, because you know nothing about Dhamma. You don't know that Dhamma is classified into Suttanta and Abhidhamma. You don't know that because you translate it. This is a little bit complicated. Piping, am I explained clear, or you have any questions to help others?
clear.
Okay.
Clear. You mean that every word in the world is world language. When if you want to Sikaya, you have to transfer world language to Dhamma language, which is using Makata language because Makata language is very near to the Dhamma language, right?
Sadhu. And the important one is, whatever language we're using, those are classified as Suttanta. And as we mentioned, as we try to show everyone here that Dhamma is not alphabets, not the book that you read, not the word that you hear. But Dhamma is the pathway to connect from Suttanta to Nirvana. What happened here? The things that you start from communication language here, then you go to Dhamma, because you have connection here. We'll have there's connection from Suttanta to Dhamma, because Dhamma consisting of Suttanta and Dhamma. So there's to make it more simplified. However, it's quite complicated, but I try to simplify it. It seems like they have a line connect here and line connect here, but there's no line connect directly from Suttanta to Pitama. That's why before we going from Suttanta to Nirvana, we need to go back, because there's line connect here. We need to go back from Suttanta back to Dhamma first. And from Dhamma, there's a line connect here. We go from Dhamma into Abhidhamma here. And from here, we go to Pandyati first, because it need to have some representative of Paramatadam into our book. The one that quite important, it quite unusual is this one. When we connect to Pandyati classified into this two groups. The first one is Atta Pandyati and second one is Sattha Pandyati. However, these two, Atta Pandyati and thus Sattha Pandyati, doesn't have the characteristics themselves. You need to go from Pandyati, Abhidhamma, and then back to Paramatta Dhamma. At this place, you'll see the components that stay in here is consisting of Citta 121, Cetasika 52, Rupa 28, and Nirvana 1. This is what you want, right? You want Nirvana 1. So from here, that's why you need to travel from Suttanta through Dhamma, through Abhidhamma, and then through Pandyati, and through Abhidhamma, and through Paramatta Dhamma, and then you'll reach Citta, Cetasika, Rupa themselves, and you can reach Nirvana. One very important to look at this place is that here at Paramatta Dhamma, there exist of the real characteristics, because these are the real components that interact together. They exist of Samanya Lakkhana 3 and Vises Lakkhana 4. However, one thing very important and very interesting that without the teaching of Nuttara Samma Sambuddhi, we are unable to know what happened here. When we know that Chit and Cetasik create Rupa and Rupa create everything like us, right? However, when we become ourselves like this, the characteristics itself doesn't come with us, but doesn't come into ourselves, but it's the characteristic themselves doesn't really come with us, but they embedded within some of our components. They embedded certain characteristics with and in our body. However, the component themselves doesn't the real characteristic and real Citta, Cetasika, and Rupa doesn't come to this body, because then when they didn't really come, stay with us here, then when we die or when we pass away from this world, the information that contained within Citta, Cetasika, and Rupa remains, doesn't disappear with us. So the important one that I'm about to mention is that when Citta, Cetasika interact together, become Rupa, right? And Rupa combined into many Rupa. And then they are building this body. And once they are going to build this body, they need to cut or eliminate these real characteristics out of the component. Otherwise, they will come with us. And the component that cut these characteristics out of the component that before building our body, that's one called anapanasati. And people use anapanasati, they translate it into certain communication language. But actually, anapanasati is the one that cut the real characteristics out and then turn them into panyati, and then panyati go through dhamma and go to suttanta. That's why that become our body, our environment, and the stories. That's why our body, environment, and the stories that we have in our everyday lives doesn't have the real component with us, only the characteristic that embedded within this form that you see. Only the characteristics, not only the embedded characteristics, not citta, cetasika themselves, because they stays in Paramatta Dhamma. So until here, you see that with the enlightenment of Buddha, then the pathway will show. Dhamma happens. When Dhamma happens, the pathway from Suttanta to reach Nirvana happen. And then the person that can follow the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambodhi, the one who can follow this pathway from Suttanta to Dhamma, to Abhidhamma, to Panyati, to Abhidhamma, to Paramattadhamma, then Rupa, Cetasika, Citta, then they can reach Nirvana. This is very simplified way to explain what Dhamma is. So at this moment, you see that Dhamma is not alphabets anymore. Not the alphabets that appear on the paper, not the alphabets that appears on your computer, not the alphabets that appear on your mobile phone, nothing like that. It's another story. But the connection, there also a connection between those alphabets that you see that are written on the paper and the media that you are consuming. Those media. Actually, when you are talking about that, we need to translate from Suttanta language into Paramatta language, Paramatta Dhamma language. When at the beginning of the Dhamma, Sikha Dhamma, we always insist that everyone need to be able to recite Citta 121, Cetasika 52, and Rupa 28. Because these are essential alphabets in Paramatta Dhamma. So how can we translate or travel from Suttanta into Paramatta Dhamma through Dhamma? From here, like alphabets on the paper, right? At this point of view, I'm trying to show very slowly to translate Dhamma that we see on the Suttanta world into Paramatta Dhamma world. In Suttanta world, you see Dhamma as the alphabets on the paper, on the media that you consume, right? There's an object. So when we translate this one into Paramatta Dhamma world, Paramatta Dhamma only the language of Citta, Cetasika, Rupa, Nirvana. There's no paper here. There's no ink. There's no screen. There's no smartphone. There's no computer. No tablet. How to translate them? How to translate those things from Suttanta world into Paramatta Dhamma world? Start here. When you see the alphabets on the paper, the ink on the paper, right? But the ink on those paper, they are what? They are Vinipokharupa 8, right? Very simplified.
Yes.
I try to explain it very short. So at this moment, most of the people who Sikaya knows that your paper, the ink on the paper, they are consisting of Vinipokharupa 8. Avinipokarupa 8 พี่ปิง can you recite Avinipokarupa 8 what are they
โอเคปัทวีมหาภูตรูปะอาโปมหาภูตรูปะเตโชมหาภูตรูปะวายโยมหาภูตรูปะรูปะวิสยรูปะคันทะวิสยรูปะรัสสะวิสยรูปะอาหารรูปะ This is the smallest of
right
everything
right and from this point look carefully we have just translate from Suttanta into Abhidhamma how's that you translate a paper and ink from Suttanta right
yes
then we translate into the language of Paramattha Dhamma, which remains here. We need to go through Dhamma, Abhidhamma, Panyati Abhidhamma, and Paramattha Dhamma through here. And the alphabets that we use is only Citta, Cetasika, and Rupa, right? And the alphabet that we have just used is only Avinipoka Rupa 8. You see? Here,
Yep.
8.
Mhm.
Avinipoka Rupa 8, consisting in Rupa 8. We have just translated from Suttanta into Paramattha Dhamma using the language of Rupa 8, right? And
Okay.
if we Sikhaya into more details, we see a lot of things here. That is only the translation of the Suttanta, the paper and ink, into Rupa, right? But
Yes.
there's a little bit more. Until this moment, you see that if the paper and the ink contains Avinipoka Rupa 8, Avinipoka Rupa 8 actually they also contain Citta 107, right?
Yep.
When Citta 107 now, paper with ink, now it translates into Avinipoka Rupa 8 and also Citta 107. You see, we translate in a little bit more details now, not only Rupa, but also Citta 107, right? If we look into more details, we know that this 107 need to classify into two groups. The first one is 37 and the second one is 70, right?
Mm-hmm.
The more we Sikhaya, the more detail that we can translate from Suttanta into Paramattha Dhamma through Dhamma. You see, from here.
Mm-hmm.
And at this moment, we need to Sikhaya. The more we Sikhaya, the more we translate from Suttanta into Paramattha Dhamma into Citta Cetasika Rupa. The more we know their characteristics, the more we know about their representative, the closer to Nirvana we are. This is very simplified one, but even it's very simplified one, it's a bit complicated than the translation of the sentences, right? From the sentence that we start from the first is with the enlightenment of Buddha, it appears of Dhamma, and when we Sikha Dhamma, then we can reach Sangha. That is very simplified sentences. And that's why we always mention that Dhamma is very Kampira or profound. You cannot think that simple. If it's that simple, Anuttara Samma Sampothi doesn't need 20 Asankhaya, Kamrai San Kap, Kamrai 100,000 Kappai for an enlightenment. That's why we need to put all our efforts and our understanding. The more, no matter what, we put our efforts in our education or our study, we need to put much more effort on Dhamma. It's not very simple, right? At this moment, you will see that what I'm trying to explain until now is that we have just transformed your understanding from Dhamma, from words that appears on the paper, on the media, into the pathway to connect from Suttanta into to Dhamma and to Abhidhamma and from to Panyati and to Paramattha Dhamma, and then we translate, we reach the language of Paramattha Dhamma of Citta, Cetasika, Rupa, and then the more we understand it, we can reach Nirvana. Right? This is a little bit more complicated, but still simplified version of Dhamma. That's why we always mention that there is no translation. Why
Okay.
translation? right?
Yeah.
And until this moment, I believe that you start to see that why we need no translation at all, because it's a pathway. No translation for the pathway. The pathway need to be shown and need to be traveled through the pathway, right? Piping, do you have any questions?
I add more understanding, no? You try to tell everybody that from the Sutanta we are everything's allow us is Sutanta because it is story, humans and place. And then when we use the alphabet in the world language, we bring it back to the Dhamma language. And then from this Dhamma language, which is Paramattha Dhamma, Citta, Cetasika, Rupa, and then can lead to Nivarana because of this world language can link to the Dhamma language, and then Dhamma language link to the Paramattha Dhamma, right? So if you can link like that by not translate it, you can reach Nivarana.
Right.
Okay.
For
Clear.
a little bit more details.
Yeah.
Of the communication language that you are using. For in this case, we are using English, right? But actually, is this the language? What you hear at this moment is not actually the language that you hear. It's the sound wave that travel through air and reach your ear, right? And what we say here, the voice that come out of our body is the wave of is the audio wave that using our organs through our mouth and then create sound waves through the airs and reach the device, and the device transform it into the signal, electrical signal, and then through internet. And then from your side, these translate back into sound wave through air and reach your ear. And then it reach your system. And then you can translate it to, you can perceive it as voice, as language, as English language, right? This is the way to look a little bit more details into the language that you've just heard. So you see, there are lots of components related with this topic, right? With this travel, the voice travel from here through everyone. This kind of the details that happen. What happened is here, Sutanta, right? We start from people, place, objects, and stories. Start from something into audio wave, into sound wave, and through air, and these they are consisting of what? Again, they're consisting of Avinipokarupa 8. And within those Avinipokarupa 8 lies Citta 107. We are translating language that you just hear at Sutanta level into Paramattha language. That's why no translation. But how can we travel from here to here, from Sutanta to Paramattha Dhamma? We travel through Dhamma. That's why we need to explain that there is connection here. There's a line connect from Sutanta to Dhamma, and Dhamma connect to Abhidhamma. Abhidhamma connect to Panyati Dhamma, and Panyati Dhamma connect back to Abhidhamma, and Abhidhamma connect back to Paramattha Dhamma, and that you reach Citta, Cetasika, Rupa, Nirvana. I'm showing that with only English language, right? Normally, we explain only English language, translate back into Dhamma language, and then from communication language to Dhamma language, right? But today, I'm explaining a little bit into more details, or a little bit more profound, that the voice that you see, the voice that you hear, how the voice travel, how the voice reach your ear, and how are those objects or those system classified in Dhamma, and those object and those system classified as Suttanta. In order from Suttanta to reach Paramattha Dhamma, you need to go through Dhamma. Without Dhamma, you have no connection between Suttanta to Paramattha Dhamma. So that's why you need the enlightenment of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, because without the enlightenment of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, this pathway, this Dhamma, no one knows about this. So there is no connection here that people can travel from Suttanta to Paramattha Dhamma to Citta Cetasika Rupa, and no one can reach Nirvana because this pathway, no one knows about it. But once Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi enlightened, this pathway reappear. So Dhamma can connect Suttanta to Abhidhamma, and Abhidhamma existing of Panyati and Paramattha Dhamma, and under Paramattha Dhamma lies Citta 121, Cetasik 52, Rupa 28, and Nirvana 1. That is the result. Who can follow the pathway of Dhamma can reach Nirvana. Without Dhamma, no one can reach Nirvana. Without Buddha, no one can know Dhamma. Right? This is a little bit more detailed, maybe a little bit more profound, not only translation, but
So
I
here, because of Dhamma is not only alphabet and
Yeah.
it's not only word language. So you will see that if you Sikkaya Dhamma, you can see someone that they can remember many old Tham, no? They can know many vocabulary, Dhamma vocabulary, but somewhat that one cannot reach to the Paramattha Dhamma utmost. The Paramattha Dhamma utmost is to Nibbana.
Right.
That is that you will turn yourself from a bad person that have akusala citta to the good person, arahanta, thara person.
Right.
So it is the trick here. That not the word, not alphabet, but you have to Dhamma language cannot it's not at 0 level. It is 99 level. So you cannot know that who is greater than you, who is better than you, right?
Right.
But you can see that this one is very clever, that this one can remember or Dhamma vocabulary.
Right. But actually, if you look into more details, that is a good point, Piping. When you are able to recite something, that is story, right? That your body, here, this one, and they can recite, just staying here in your head. That's a very simplified one. You show that you can recite them by be able to speak it out loud without looking at the paper, right? You see, it's still the same. Person, objects, stories, places still remains in Suttanta. However, as we mentioned at the beginning of the topic that we mentioned today, if you look in a little bit into more details, our body, our mind, our brain, and the voice that we have to speak, or the paper that we looking, or without looking, we can speak because we can recite them. Those objects or those ideas consisting of Avinipokharupa 8 is here. And also in Avinipokharupa 8, or it lies Citta 107. Within those words, that you can recite. Altogether with the pathway that you know, the more you seek kaya, the more you can control, not actually you, the more Anuttara Samma Sambodhi help you control those 107 citta to control akusala citta 12, for them to remain idle and try to activate all those citta instead of akusala 12. So this is a little bit complicated, right? That's why we mention in every class, and especially in this class, that Dhamma is not that simple. It's very Pira. When you recite them, your body, you can speak it. You speak out without looking at the paper or the book. That people define this kind of action as be able to recite or be able to speak out without looking on the paper, on anything. But that is the action of Suttanta, the body, the object, stories. However, the cause itself, the real action lies in Paramatta Dhamma. So the performance in Suttanta level doesn't define what happened in Paramatta level. This one is quite confused, because even though the performance in Suttanta level is identical, however, the pathway is different. The result of the identical action in Suttanta level can cause completely different result within Paramatta Dhamma level, because the way they travel to pathway of Dhamma sent completely to the wrong components. For example, like the one who recite in level 0, they know nothing about citta, cetasika, and rupa. Know nothing about citta, cetasika, rupa. They cannot recite citta 121, cetasika 52, rupa 28. They can recite them. Exactly the same with our group, who can recite citta 121, cetasika 52, and rupa 28. What happened here? They don't know what they read or how the brain work. They don't have the alphabets under Paramatta Dhamma level. They don't have the alphabets. In this case, we need the alphabet of Avipurupa 8. They doesn't have this kind of alphabets. Moreover, in Avipurupa 8 lies Citta 107. They also have no alphabets here. They don't know anything about Citta 107. So the result is, from here, go through Paramatta Dhamma, where knowing nothing about Citta, Cetasika, Rupa, it turns out to be only communication language, without knowing nothing about the Dhamma that Anuttara Samma Sambodhi explained, because this pathway requires to reach Paramatta Dhamma, and to reach Paramatta Dhamma, you need Citta 121, at least Citta 121, Cetasika 52, and Rupa 28, in order to translate into Paramatta Dhamma language. In this case, they can recite at level here, but know nothing about it. So the results will be completely different, or comparing to the one who knows, who can recite Citta, Cetasika, and Rupa, the more you know about Citta, Cetasika, and Rupa, the more effective when you perform a Suttanta. Yes. In the case of the same performance, the same action, and in Suttanta level, can recite them, and this person knows about Citta, Cetasika, and Rupa. Then when it reach Paramatta Dhamma, you have Rupa 28 to Rupa 28. So the place to stay of Avinipoka Rupa 8. And you're also able to recite Citta 121. You have place for Citta 107 to stay here. A little bit complicated, but it's still simplified because there's a lot more complication here, but this is simplified version. I insist this, even though it sounds complicated, but this is still simplified version. So the same action that you see in Sutanta level has a completely different result in Brahmadatam level. And these through Dhamma, the pathway here through Dhamma. So Sutanta Dhamma, Abhidhamma, Panyati Dhamma, Abhidhamma, Brahmadatam, and then in this place you will reach Citta, Cetasika, Rupa, and Nirvana. And before we're running out of time again, we have a lot of slides here. Again, here before we are running out of time. So at this moment, you see a little bit more complicated version between the relation between Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. At this moment, I believe that everyone wants Punya or Kusala, right? So, do you want Kusala or Punya?
We want
I mean,
what?
Kusala and Punya, do you want them?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe that everyone wants them, right? Here, one interesting thing. Well, when we want Punya or Kusala, we know that Punya is Punya Kriyavatu, right? And the result of performing according to Punya Kriyavatu, the result is Kusala Kamapata 10. This is a simplified one. So look carefully from here. We are here, right? We are people. We are our body, objects, stories. How we perform in our Sutanta world that cause the result of Punya Kriyavatu. When we go to Katina ceremony, Piping, can we set Katina ceremony date with only without looking back to the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambodhi? Can we set the New Year's Day like 31st December as Katina Day for us? Because
No.
we have holidays at that time. It's quite convenient for us to join the ceremony. Everyone
No. Because that is not our ceremony. We useอะไรนะ solar system. What is it?
Right. So why can't we set the date by our convenience? Why we
Because
have to go? Why we have to set? Why we have certain criteria for date of Katina ceremony?
because we must follow the Aliyah.
Right.
Yes.
It's one of the very important point tripping. Why we need to follow the area. When this criteria happen, does it happen today? No. This criteria happened when Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi was alive, right?
Yes.
So we need to go back to follow those criteria that set in the past, right?
Yep.
And those criteria classified in Sutanta, right?
Yep.
And for Aye and Pante, Panchajivara or Trajivara is quite hard to find. It's easier for you to find t-shirt or trousers. Can we use t-shirt and trousers instead?
No.
Pante Aye. How come?
No.
Why do we
Because
have to? Yes.
we have to follow Aliyah Mukhala only.
Because when we go to the department stores, we can't find Trajivara or Panchajivara. It's easier for us to use t-shirt and trousers. Why can't them? Because it's just a clothes, right? If we decide it by ourselves, right?
Yes.
But Piping insisted, we need to have the Jivara or Pancha Jivara, the Jivara for Bhikkhu and Pancha Jivara for Bhikkhuni. When does this criteria happen?
วินัยะ
Yes, and that happened when Anuttara Samma Sambuddha was alive, right?
right
So again, we need to go back to the past to enter this kind of criteria, right? So
yes
we cannot decide it by ourselves in present day because it's easier. Like we have just explained it to you that it's easier for us to find a t-shirt instead of the Jivara or Pancha Jivara, right? Because no one sells the Jivara or Pancha Jivara, especially in abroad in department stores. So why we need to wear the Jivara or Pancha Jivara in order to follow the Vinaya? Because we need to go back to the past to comply with the criteria in the past. So we need to perform our sutanta. We need to bring our sutanta back to the sutanta in the past. That's why we need to set the Katina ceremony date according to the criteria in the past when Anuttara Samma Sambuddha was alive. And also the dress code of Pante and Aye need to follow the criteria that Anuttara Samma Sambuddha mentioned in the past. That's why we need to go back in the past. And that's why, this is quite a simplified one, that's why we always said that Bunya Kriya Vattu is in the past. Because you cannot decide it by your present opinion. You need to go back to the criteria that's set in the past. And if you look a little bit more careful here in this topic, how about the word or the sentence that we speak on the date of the ceremony? Pippi, can we create new sentences or new topic that we are talking within the Katina ceremony? Can we decide it by
no
our
if we done that it mean that we create our new sutanta our new life to go to alamana and go to the future
right?
but you don't want to go to have next life you want to go to nivarana so you have to go back to the past life
Right.
by follow Ariya Bukkala in the Vinaya and
Right.
Sutanta that Paramattha have said before.
Right. That's why we need to go back to Tipitaka to look what are the words or sentences that Anuttara Samma Sambuddha mentioned in that ceremony in the past. At this moment, you see the date. We need to go back in the past. What is the criteria of the date? What is the criteria of the dress? Right? And what is the criteria of the sentence or things that you should speak?
Mm-hmm.
And are we going to follow at only these three topics? How about our habits? How about our activities? Do we need to go back and change our habits and our activities to comply with Buddha Savok or Suttanta in the past that Anuttara Samma Sambuddha just mentioned? That's why Ajahn tried to change us a little by little from the date, from the dress, from the topic that we should speak, from the Jaran Dhamma, the alphabets that we need to speak out loud. And also Ajahn also mentioned about our activities and also our habits that's why it needs to be changed. From that point, if you can turn your Suttanta, your present Suttanta back to Suttanta during the time when Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi was alive. Start from that. At this point, we start from present. We go back to the past. This seemed like translation, but bear with it. This simplified one, but still complicated one. Your habit from present. Turn back into your proper habit to follow the criteria in the past when Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi was alive. Then that is Suttanta, right? You need to travel through Dhamma, and again, Abhidhamma, Panyati and Paramatta Dhamma, and then the real Citta, Cetasika, Rupa, Nirvana 1. Bunya Kriya Vatu, 10. Start from 10, then turn 11, and then turn 23, and then that is the travel of Bunya Kriya Vatu from Suttanta into Paramatta Dhamma. And from Bunya Kriya Vatu, if you look carefully within Manokamma, either Tujurit or Manokamma Sujurit, they are representative of Cetasika. Cetasika actually stays here in Paramatta Dhamma. For Manokam Tujurit, Apicca Piyapata Micca Titi, Apicca Lopa Cetasik, Piyapata Posa Cetasik, Micca Titi Cetasik is Titi Cetasika. And for Manokam Sujurit, Anapicca Piyapata Samaditi, Anapicca Alopa Cetasika, Piyapata Atosa Cetasika, and
Samadhi.
Samadhi is Panya Cetasika. You see, we just we have just simplified them. Translate your behavior today back into your proper behavior in Suttanta, in Buddha's era, and then from that behavior from Suttanta that perform the same, trying to perform the same as when Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi was alive. The results of those performance through Sila cause the interaction of in Paramatta Dhamma level cause Bunya Kriya Vatu to reach Manokam Sujurit. Napicca Piyapata Samadhi. This is simplified one, very simplified version. How about a little bit more complicated version that we will link into Kalapa, we will link into Rupa Samudana Rupa, and there are a lot of stories to explain, but this is quite simplified one. So for our class today, we are trying to point out that if you look carefully, Dhamma is not the alphabets that appears on the media anymore, or not the voice that you hear, but it's the pathway that connect our world into Paramatta Dhamma, and you need to follow this pathway in order to reach Nirvana. And we also show the sample of how we gain punya or kusala, because we need them in order to not go to Abhaya Bhumi 4, and our ultimate goal is to reach Ariya Pukala at this present life, because we have no choice. We need to be there. Otherwise, we need to we will go to the future, and the future we need to start from one again, and one is Aveji Mahanaraka, which no one wants to be there. So
Okay.
that would be at the end of the class. Pipi, how about do you have any questions?
No, I have one interesting that from this class is that how to go back to the past life. Today is the class for telling everybody about how to go back to the past life in order to get Punya Kriya Vatu 10.
This is still simplified version.
Yes.
Simplified version.
The start point.
Starting point, because
Yes.
we show in Suttanta level,
Yeah.
but not yet into Paramatta Dhamma level. We're still way from very complicated version. It is still very simplified version. That's why we need to go back, because otherwise, if we don't go back in Sutanta, we will set our date. Piping, I think we should set Katina during the New Year's because we have long holiday there. Or how about Songkran Festival, because we have
easier
yes, anyone can join us because you have a long holiday there.
yeah
But why bother? Why we need to set it according
because we want to go to Nivarana, we don't want
Right.
to go to Alamana and
Right.
go to the next life.
Right, because if we set
That is not stable for us.
correct.
If we go to next life, we can go down to Naraka and
Yes,
Abhayapum 4. But
yes.
if we can go back to past life, follow the Paramattha Dhamma, then we can go to Nivarana.
Right. So please don't set the Katina Day on December and not for Songkran Festival as we suggest, because
Okay.
in that case we will go to Niraya or hell. Definitely.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's follow Dhamma only. Sikhaya is
yes.
the start point and go together with us.
Yes.
Next class.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
How about others? Do you have any questions?
No one have question.
Okay. If there is no question, that will be end of this class. Sadhu, sadhu,
Sadhu,
sadhu.
sadhu.
Namuti upani
Namuti
pantha
upani.
matami.
Motami. Namaskaran Aye, please. Namaskaran Aye.
วีสติอริยมรรคะ
Namaskaran Aye.
Aye.
วีสติสามัญญพละ
Namaskaran Aye.
เอกานิพพานะขิปปาพิญญาโดยเฉียบพลันในประวัติการนี้เทิน
Sadhu,
Sadhu, sadhu. Namuti upani pantha anumotami.
Sadhu, sadhu, namuti panidibandhan, namuti.
ขอ
Sadhu
เรื่องไหม
ค่ะ
ครับ
โอเค ก็คือ
ทำไม
คำศัพท์อ่ะมันค่อนข้างซ้ำแต่ว่าพอดูอ่ะถ้าสมมุติว่านั่งฟังแบบจริง ๆจังๆจะรู้หนทางของการถอยกลับไปในอดีตจะถอยยังไง
นะ
โอเค เดี๋ยวหมอต้อมจะเข้าสอนต่อแล้วต้อง
โม
รีบ
ท
ปิด
นา
ค
ครั
ลาส
บ
ค่ะสาธุทุกคนนะคะ
ครับสาธุครั
ขอบคุณ
บ
ค่ะ
Sadhu, sadhu, namuti panidibandhan, namuti.
สาธุครับ
ค่ะ